This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
It has been a long, hectic, and terribly chaotic day in lower Manhattan, as you can imagine. Let's take a look at some live pictures of emergency equipment as you see them still there, personnel still on hand for the last few hours. Firemen have been moving from the ground up to the top of the Twin Towers, and police have been coming from the top down. We can show you now that video of a helicopter was taken sometime within the past hour or so, the helicopter landing on top of the Trade Center and picking up, among others, several pregnant women who had been stuck on the 94th floor. They were then brought down by the helicopter, brought to the ground, and ultimately moved out of there aboard buses and emergency vehicles. All of that, as I say, has been taking place late this evening into the night. As of this moment, however, they think they have everyone out of the Twin Towers. It is a little misleading, incidentally, to think of the World Trade Center's Twin Towers as just a couple of very tall buildings in lower Manhattan. Think of them instead as a vertical city with as many people as Dearborn, Michigan. When the blast went off today underneath the Trade Center, all those people needed to get out. Only the electricity was off, which meant that the elevators weren't working and there were no lights in the stairwell and no instructions on where to go. Some of those people, remember, were more than 100 floors up. As of this hour, 7 people are dead, more than 500 have been hospitalized, 200 were treated on the scene, and there is growing reason to believe that the explosion was caused by a terrorist bomb. Here's what New York Governor Mario Cuomo said on the Larry King program just a couple of hours ago. This is a quote. "The information I have is it was definitely a bomb. The one thing about this that is most notable, as far as I can tell, is that never in my lifetime has this ever happened in the United States. No foreign people or force has ever done this to us. Until now, we were invulnerable. It is therefore a unique moment in our history." That's a quote from Mario Cuomo. Joining us now live here in Washington is Skip Brandon, Deputy Assistant Director for Intelligence at the FBI and one of the Bureau's leading terrorism experts. What do you make of it?
Well, we still don't know exactly what has happened. We won't know until we can get people on the ground into the blast area. We still can't do that at this point because the fires are still going. So it will be a while before we know exactly what's happened. Obviously, there's been a terrible tragedy, an explosion of some sort.
Mr. Brandon, let me stop you. I thought the fires were out hours ago. You're telling me there are still fires going down there?
There's still some smoke in the area, is my understanding, and it's also still very hot. We're also concerned about the safety of investigators getting in because of structural damage.
Well, I must also tell you, I've been told that a group that was hired, a firm that was hired by the FBI, went down there. They say the evidence they have seen indicates at least 150 pounds of plastique.
We're not prepared to call that at this point. It'll take a while for us to be able to determine exactly what has happened.
All right. If you'll be good enough to stand by, we'll come back to you a little bit later, maybe talk about some of the ramifications of this. We've seen a little bit of what happened today after the explosion rocked the World Trade Center. Now, here's Nightline's Jeff Greenfield with a report to fill in some of the gaps.
When it opened 20 years ago, New York's World Trade Center was called a city within a city. Its twin towers, each 110 stories high, are the second tallest buildings in the world. 40,000 people a day work here. Another 50,000 visit. Subway and commuter lines snake beneath the complex, which encompasses some 250 elevators and 2 zip codes all its own. It is the essence of a complex, intricately integrated urban machine. At 18 minutes past noon today, the machine blew up.
There's been an explosion deep below the 110-story towers of the World Trade Center in New York City.
It began in a parking garage under the Vista Hotel, an enormous blast that was felt a quarter-mile high.
Oh, there was a huge explosion that rocked the building.
A lot of people panicked. That's why it was so backed up, because everybody was panicking and trying to run through one door.
The blast blew a hole some 150 feet wide in the wall of the garage. But that was only the beginning. Under the garage is the major station on a New York-New Jersey commuter line. The explosion collapsed the ceiling of that station.
All of a sudden we heard a loud bang, and the lights momentarily went off and the building shook.
So powerful was the explosion that it blasted up through 3 levels, reaching the concourse of the Trade Center towers. Within minutes, thick smoke began pouring into the stairwells and elevator shafts, which acted as chimneys, pulling the smoke all the way up through the towers.
That place is a death trap. Let me tell you something. There was smoke where there shouldn't be smoke. I was on the 107th floor, and we heard the bang, and that place filled up in 5 minutes.
As firefighters began moving in, Consolidated Edison, the city's public utility, cut off all electricity to the towers as a safety measure. For reasons yet unknown, emergency backup lights did not work, plunging thousands of people into darkness.
We just kept following everybody else down the stairs, and everyone was going faster, faster, and, you know, just telling everybody to cover your mouth and keep your head down.
By early afternoon, lower Manhattan looked like a war zone. Office workers, faces blackened with smoke and soot, hundreds gasping for breath, staggered into the frigid February air. More than 100 emergency vehicles jammed the streets around the World Trade Center. Some were summoned from New Jersey, just across the Hudson River. Local hospitals were overwhelmed with hundreds seeking treatment, mostly for smoke inhalation.
Approximately 3/4 of the patients are suffering from severe or lesser degrees of smoke inhalation. One of the patients been on a respirator. At least one patient has been in cardiac arrest. We've had one patient with a fractured skull, and regrettably, one patient brought to St. Vincent's expired approximately 2:30 p.m.
With no electricity in the towers and with the 911 phone system hopelessly jammed, local newscasters became a lifeline to hundreds of people still trapped in the towers.
Scott?
Yes, hello.
Are you having difficulty breathing?
Well, there's a pregnant woman who works with us up here, and a lot of people are panicking.
What are you doing for her?
Well, we put her down on the floor, and she's just very nervous.
Tell him to calm down. We're going to try to get help to him.
Okay.
The fires are out.
You're going to be fine.
You'll be fine. They'll be there very shortly.
Some of the rescues were right out of Hollywood. A pregnant woman plucked from the rooftop by a helicopter. A firefighter pulled from the crater of the explosion.
All right, this story is ever-changing, and the latest word on the explosion at the World Trade Center, 5 people are now dead and more than 300 people injured.
By evening, the fires had been brought under control, but the shockwaves from the explosion were far from over. New York's normally lunatic Friday evening rush hour became pure chaos. Roadways, bridges, and tunnels closed. Commuter and subway service disrupted. Then came the biggest shock of all.
This catastrophe reportedly was caused by a massive explosive device placed in the sub-basement of the Trade Center.
The machine had been broken not by a freak act of nature or by metal fatigue or by human error, but by a deliberate act of terror in a garage that houses cars of the Secret Service. Cars that were to be used during a presidential visit to this area in 3 days.
We have to tell you now that the official count of the dead so far at this moment is 7 dead. We know of about more than 100 injuries, something on the order of about 150, and it's expected that the injuries may number 500 before the count is done.
Into the night, the rescues continued. A group of school children on a field trip. A group of office workers trapped for hours in an elevator. And as the rescue continued, so did the speculation. Now the air and the roads are clearing. Now the lights have come on again. Now the web will be reconnected. Now the damage will be fixed. At least the damage that can be fixed. Jeff Greenfield for Nightline in New York.
Standing by live now is my ABC News colleague, Mort Dean. Mort, you heard Assistant FBI Director Skip Brandon say before there was still smoke down in the area, making it difficult to examine what was going on. Is it my imagination, or weren't you down there earlier this afternoon?
Ted, I was down into the garage earlier this afternoon on the first floor of the 3-story garage, and there was no doubt that there had been a major event there. The force of the explosion was tremendous. Cars were just torn apart all over the garage.
What is the situation now as far as any people being left in the World Trade Center is concerned?
I was told just a few minutes ago that the Port Authority, one of the agencies here, has said that the 2 towers are clear, as is the Vista Hotel that is part of the complex, although police officers are still working from floor 1 to floor 50 just to be certain that nobody is on the lower floors, Ted.
All right, Maureen, thanks very much. I hope you'll be able to stand by. When we return, we'll continue our discussion with Skip Brandon of the FBI, and we'll be joined by the Commissioner of the New York City Fire Department.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Lexus Luxury Automobiles.